So, welcome everyone. Yeah, people have started joining. So, welcome everyone. Happy Independence Day to all of you. Today, we are here to attend a webinar on the topic of emergency. And our speaker is again Mr. Randhir Jain. I will give a short introduction about him in a while. Before starting, I would like to thank Legal Root Lift, who has organized this webinar, and along with them their promotional partners Imagix Creativity Studio and collaborator Fun with Science. So I thank all of these who has organized this webinar with us, and also Mr. Randhir Jain, who has agreed to give his expertise and his experience during the emergency. So today's webinar is on lessons from 1975 emergency. To give a brief introduction about Shri Randhir Jain, I would like to tell you that he has been the person who has witnessed this emergency, and he has fought so many cases under MISA and various other provisions wherein in this emergency, so I would rather than wasting anyone else's time, I have seen many people have already joined in, so I am taking myself off and thanking Legal Root Lift for conducting this webinar, and I am now putting Mr. Randhir Jain online so that he will start his webinar. I would also like to first mention that once he continues his discussion, whosoever has any questions to ask, they can ask this question in last 20 minutes of the session, and they will be answered. In the event if someone is not answered, they can please wait, and we will try to answer all the questions. So Mr. Randhir Jain now.
मित्रों, 74वें स्वतंत्रता दिवस की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं। मैं रणधीर जैन बिना किसी राजनीतिक प्रतिबद्धता के एक सामान्य भारतीय नागरिक के तौर पर और कानून का एक छात्र होने के नाते कुछ बात हम लोग करेंगे। कृपया ध्यान रखें, मेरा जितना भी सोच है वो कानून की जो दशा है, जो हमारे कानूनों के प्रावधान हैं उसके ऊपर है, और उसमें लोगों के राजनीतिक निहितार्थ कहीं कहीं होते हैं, वो उनके रहें, कम से कम मेरा उनसे कोई मतलब नहीं है। जब हम एमरजेंसी की बात करते हैं तो एमरजेंसी का कालखंड 26 जून सन 1975 से लेकर जब अचानक भारत की तत्कालीन प्रधानमंत्री श्रीमती इंदिरा गांधी उस समय के राष्ट्रपति श्री फखरुद्दीन अली अहमद के पास पहुंची रात के 11:30 बजे, जब 25 जून के समाप्त होने में कुल 8 घंटा बाकी था, और राष्ट्रपति महोदय ने बगैर सोचे समझे, बगैर पूछे ताछे जो प्रोक्लेमेशन एमरजेंसी की उनके सामने रखी गई उस पर उन्होंने हस्ताक्षर कर दिए। उसके बाद जो कुछ हुआ वो आप लोगों में जिनका जन्म 1960 से पहले का है उन्होंने बहुत कुछ ये अपनी आंखों से देखा होगा, कुछ ने शायद इसको भोगा भी होगा। बाकी लोगों के लिए मेरा प्रयास रहेगा कि सार संक्षेप में मैं उस समय की सारी बात स्थिति को आपके सामने रखूं। जहाँ तक हमारी चर्चा का विषय है, मैं समझता हूँ कि वी कैन डिवाइड इट into 3-4 subheads. Say the background and motive for declaration of emergency, what were the modalities adopted, how things were done, how laws were manipulated, who failed the Indian society, executive, judiciary or the parliament. Parliament in our system is nothing but an extension and a controlled entity of the party leadership, which controls the executive also. Of course, in 1975, we did not have the 10th schedule. Now, even 10th schedule to the constitution has come in place, making things much more difficult. Some effort has been made to remedy certain things and streamline certain deficiencies which were felt in the provisions relating to emergency, namely Articles 352 and 359 of the Constitution. But how far it goes, what is still lacking, it will be my endeavor to put before you. Friends, if I may read before you the simple word, it was a 3-line proclamation issued by the President saying that in exercise of powers conferred by Clause 1 of Article 352 of the Constitution, I, Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, President of India, by this proclamation declare that a grave emergency exists whereby the security of India is threatened by internal disturbance. So what was the reason? What was the motive? What was the moving factor which compelled the President to sign this declaration and proclaim emergency? Was professed to be the threat of internal disturbance, which resulted into threatening the security of India. Whether there was any material or anything, or it was just a canard to cheat the Indian people, I'll try to put it in my own words a little later. If I may, by way of background, say 2-3 things. Number one, in the year 1971, there was a war for liberation of Bangladesh, and that war, in the wake of that war, on 2nd of July 1971, an act came to be known, legislated by our parliament, by the name of Maintenance of Internal Security Act of 1971, which in abbreviated form is by everybody as MISA, which gained sufficient notoriety and became a despised word also. I won't go into that. I confine myself to the legal things. Thereafter, when actual outbreak of war was there, on 3rd of December 1971, an emergency was proclaimed due to nation being at war. And that proclamation logically should have ended on 16th of December 1971, when the war ended. Pak army surrendered before Indian army. 93 of Pakistani soldiers under the leadership of Lieutenant General Niazi were taken as prisoners of war, and Bangladesh came in existence. Now, but under our system, the proclamation of an emergency continues infinitely. The only way it does not have any lifespan, only way it can be put to an end is by another proclamation issued by the President. Having issued this proclamation of emergency on 3rd of December 1971, our worthy President never issued the second proclamation, and this proclamation of emergency continued till the time when on 21st of March 1977, when this emergency proclaimed on 26th of June 1975 was recalled. At that time only this was recalled. Now thereafter things kept moving. I'm leaving about experience with MISA. I'll come in a minute to that. But what happens that in the year 1971, Srimati Indira Gandhi contested an election to Lok Sabha from Raebareli constituency, and he was opposed by Mr. Raj Narayan, who was put as joint candidate by all opposition parties. The election result came, Mr. Raj Narayan lost, Indira Gandhi won, and she was of course elected as leader of Congress parliamentary party and became the Prime Minister. Mr. Raj Narayan challenged the election of Srimati Indira Gandhi to Lok Sabha on the ground of corrupt practice. And on 12th of June 1975, Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha of Allahabad High Court delivered his judgment, holding Srimati Indira Gandhi guilty of indulging into corrupt practice and setting aside her election from Raebareli constituency to Lok Sabha. On the next very day came results of Gujarat Vidhan Sabha elections, which were held recently on 13th of June 1975. When the results were declared, Congress lost badly. It fared badly in those elections, and it was thrown out of power in the state of Gujarat. So this was a second jolt received within a matter of a day. Anybody whose election has been set aside has a right to appeal to the Supreme Court. And here something is to be said, that when an appeal is filed under our system, there are certain provisions where it is said that you have a right of appeal. The appeal is provided once a judgment or decree is made against you or a conviction is made against you. The statute itself says that you have a right to, you can file an appeal. That is called a right of appeal. Same is the provision under Representation of People's Act, and an appeal lies to Supreme Court. The appeal was filed. In this, there is have been so many from the year 1952, when first elections took place in this country. The elections were challenged, the elections were set aside, people came in appeal, and a practice developed in Supreme Court to grant a stay, saying that the person concerned will not sit in the proceedings of the House, will not take part in the proceedings of the House, will not exercise any vote in the Parliament, will not draw any emoluments as a member of Parliament. But the only thing is, he or she can sign the attendance register so that he is not taken as absent and the Election Commission doesn't declare the seat as vacant. Unfortunately or fortunately, or whatever one may interpret it like, during the period when this election came, while announcing the judgment, Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha of Allahabad High Court granted interim stay to Srimati Indira Gandhi, because wherever there is an appeal provided under our legal system, you can apply to the court which makes a decree against you or records a conviction against you to facilitate your filing the appeal. That stay order was granted in her favor by the Allahabad High Court, and appeal was filed, which came to be heard before Mr. Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, who was sitting as vacation judge. Because the one thing I must mention here, in the month of June, all courts in India, at least in Delhi, namely the local courts of Delhi, High Court of Delhi, Supreme Court of India, they were all on vacations. And at that time, the practice in Supreme Court was one single judge used to sit as the vacation judge, and the matter will come before. Mr. Justice Krishna Iyer was sitting as the vacation judge. When the matter came before him, it was expected that he would make a usual order, which is made in such matters, namely that you can sign the attendance register, but you cannot participate in the deliberations in Parliament, you cannot vote there, you cannot draw any emoluments, etc. But Mr. Justice Krishna Iyer did not rest here. Of course, he made this order, but then he said something in addition to that. And if I may take a little of your time in reading that, second part of the order read, independently of the restriction in part third, where these restrictions were there, on her membership of Lok Sabha, her rights as Prime Minister or Minister, so long as she fills that office, to speak and otherwise to take part in the proceedings of either House of Parliament or a joint sitting of houses without right to vote, and to discharge other functions such as are laid down in Articles 74, 75, 78, 88, etc. under any other law, and to draw her salary as Prime Minister shall not be affected or detracted on account of conditional state. I am at a loss to understand the logic again behind this order. I cannot use any other further term. One of our colleagues has only yesterday been held guilty of contempt. I must guard myself against that. But this is the contradiction. On one place you can say that as Member of Parliament you cannot do anything. You cannot draw any salary. And at the same time he says that but as Prime Minister you can do everything. You can take part in the discussion, you can vote, accept voting, you can attend, do everything, and you can even draw emoluments. I put a question unto myself and scratch my head to find any logic behind it. These words coming from a highly respected judge of the Supreme Court. That on the one hand, because the precondition to become a minister or a prime minister in our country is that you are a member of Parliament. When your status, you have been robbed of your status as a member of Parliament, how do you continue as Prime Minister? And you cannot draw your emoluments as a member of Parliament, but you can draw it as a Prime Minister. It has its own, what to say, fallacies and failings, but it is what it came. The next day, if those of you who were major on 25th of June 1975 would recall that there was a big rally addressed by Lok Narayan Jayaprakash Narayan at Ramlila Maidan. A thickly attended meeting. Immediately thereafter, Srimati Indira Gandhi rushed to Rashtrapati Bhavan, presented this proclamation, which was obligingly signed by the President without any question. Here I am posing a question which I will come to in a little later. And the emergency is proclaimed. Now, what was the sequence of events suggests that there was something apprehended. There was some apprehension to safeguard against which this was done. Another thing which happened on that dreadful night between 25th and 26th of June 1975 was that not only senior leaders of then opposition parties, but even their active workers wherever they were, at district level, at taluk level, or maybe even lower than that, they were picked up by police. On what charges they were picked up, I will come in a little while. And a reason of terror started with that. The first manifestation of that was that on 26th of June 1975, the Indian citizens were deprived of their only means of information, namely the newspapers, because newspapers did not appear in the market. Barring one or two, because what was resorted to was that electricity supply was cut to the printing price of newspapers. So no newspapers would be printed. Those who were not within that area or press area, or somehow their electricity did not come to be snapped, they printed and distributed. Thereafter, a strict censorship was imposed on newspapers that you will not put anything in your newspaper unless you have subjected this for scrutiny of censor. Unless censor clears, you can't publish anything. With the result that obviously it put everybody in a very what you say चिंता का विषय है. क्या करें भाई, जो अंदर बैठे हैं वो तो गए, कहीं हम भी उन्हीं के साथ ना भेज दिए जाएं, इसलिए जरा देखो सोचो समझो. Of course there were few newspapers who kept their editorial space blank, and they kept it blank till the end, till the time emergency was withdrawn. Anyway, then thereafter came order after order, ordinance after ordinance, in such a quick succession that one would be very at a loss to appreciate as to what is happening. I at this stage recall Mr. Abu Ibrahim put a cartoon in Indian Express showing the then president in bathtub and an ordinance being presented to him to be signed. Leaving it at that, now I come to this. A complete reign of terror was imposed. Then everybody was put behind the bars. When you take a person in custody, you send him to jail, you have to have something, some modalities by which, under which you can put that we have arrested him for this reason. Of course, those lucky ones for whom detention orders were made under Maintenance of Internal Security Act, namely MISA, that was the end of it, at least for the time being, and as I will point out in a little while, for all times to come. Certain other persons, to pick them up and put them behind bars, Section 108 of Code of Criminal Procedure was invoked. A show of initiating some proceeding under that provision was made, and they were sent to jail in that guise. Whether such a thing can be done, could be done, I'll be talking of it in a little while. But the one thing you must keep in mind, that even today we are not rid of it. Even today it can be done. And then there was that immediately after the emergency was proclaimed in the year 1971, in the wake of war, on 4th of December 1971, Defence of India Act came to be passed. And under that Defence of India Act, certain rules were notified, which were known as Defence of India rules. Such rules, they have a life during pendency of the Defence of India Act and a little beyond that, 2 months or so. Now, those rules which were notified in the year 1975 were still available. Some persons put under the allegation of being charged under those rules. So the main plan for putting people to jail was detention under MISA, a case under Defence of India rules, or a proceeding under section 108 of CRPC. I would like to deal with them in a brief manner, because as on a personal note I can say that my association with MISA has been from almost the time when I entered legal profession, because in July 1973 I entered legal profession. That time there were large scale detentions being made under MISA on all sorts of flimsy grounds, particularly in the state of West Bengal and eastern region. Some obliging persons for those, and those detainees were mostly persons having no resources, and somebody obliged them by writing a small petition sort of thing for them from the jail, which was forwarded to the Supreme Court. And the court appointed some young lawyers to assist the court while for arguing these persons. Such a advocate who is rendering such service is called Amicus Curiae, the friend of court. I also happen to have one of them, and we, certain persons, some youngsters, while we were doing preparing for our arguments, we didn't find much of a hope in that. But one thing I told my friends, that look here, there is a word said in this order that you will be under detention for a period of 1 year or till the proclamation of emergency issued on 3rd of December 1971 last. I said, this is an indefinite thing. The emergency declared in 1971, now we are in 73. War is over, but the emergency is still there. We don't know when it is going to be withdrawn. So it brings in an element of uncertainty. We formulated some 15-20 of us. We got together, spent our time with tea and cigarette in the Supreme Court canteen and sometime in bar room, and formulated that we must raise this issue. We raised this issue. The matter was referred to the Constitution Bench of 5 judges, because wherever you challenge the constitutionality of any provision, it is to be heard by a Constitution Bench comprising of 5 judges. Matter went there. 5 senior judges of the Supreme Court sat down to, and a battle started between a band of Lilliputians and the giant Gulliver, namely Mr. Niren Dey, then Attorney General of India. On the side of petitioner, all of us, we were below 30 years of age. But we did put up our arguments, whatever little research we could do, whatever courage we could gather, and presented our case. Of course, Mr. Niren Dey put such a stiff opposition, which we never expected, and which we, frankly speaking, at that time there was no harm in considering that to which we were no match. On 20th of December 1973, and this is a reported case in the under the title of Fagu Shah versus State of Bengal, and I will also give the citation. It is AIR 1974, Supreme Court, page 613. In the 5 judges bench, 4 of the honorable judges they held, because our argument was, if I may give a little background here, we have Article 22 in the chapter of fundamental rights, which lays down certain things. I'll come to this thing a little later. In my respectful submission, Article 22 ought to have found no place in the chapter of fundamental rights, because this is not by way of a right to the citizen. This is a charter how the state can incarcerate a person without any trial or that. Anyway, leaving it at that. Honorable Mr. Justice P.N. Bhagwati, as he then was, because later on he became Chief Justice of India, he upheld our plea, because our submission was that Article 22 in clause 7, subclause B, mandates, if I may read to you, it reads that Parliament may by law prescribe, I am leaving A, coming to B, the maximum period for which any person may in any class or classes of cases be detained under any law providing for preventive detention. We put emphasis on the word maximum, and our submission was that this maximum has got to be certain. It can't be uncertain, as you say that till the proclamation of emergency laws, about which there is no certainty when it will be withdrawn. That was the argument we put forward, and Justice Bhagwati agreed with our argument and upholding our argument. He said that I will strike down this provision. This provision in MISA is unconstitutional, I strike it down. Rest of the 4 judges, they upheld it. I won't take your time in reading much of it, but if I may just read few words from the view of Justice Bhagwati. It is, he said that the power to detain without trial is itself a drastic power justified only in the interest of public security and order. It is tolerated in a free society as a necessary evil. But the power to detain a person for life without trial is something unthinkable in a democracy governed by rule of law. It is draconic power subservient of freedom and liberty and can have no place in our constitutional arrangement. To grant such a power would be to destroy the democratic way of life, to annihilate one of the most cherished values of free society, and to vest in the state authoritarian power, which is antithesis of the rule of law. It would rob the fundamental guarantee of personal liberty of all meaning and content and reduce it to a mere husk. He also quoted another celebrated judge of the Supreme Court, Justice Vivian Bose, who was a member of the bench which considered the case of A.K. Gopalan in the year 1950. Some of you, particularly those who are associated with the profession of law, would know the famous case of A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras. Having lost 4-1, we still held in our, we were happy and a little elated that at least one of the 5 judges who is going to have a sufficiently long tenure in the Supreme Court has upheld our view and upheld the issue of liberty of the citizen. That was 20th of December 1973. What came subsequent to it and what Justice Bhagwati held and wrote on 28th of April 1976 is just the opposite of it. I'll come to that in a minute. Now with this, and having watched this development of MISA in legal parlance, what we find when we look to Article 22 of the Constitution, dealing with the provision of maintenance of preventive detention, it has incorporated 3 or 4 safeguards. First is that the person who has been arrested, who has been detained, must be communicated the grounds of his detention, the reasons for which he has been detained, as early as possible. Number 2, because he should know what wrong he is supposed to have done. Number 2, he should be given an opportunity to make a representation against his detention. The order of detention, as also the representation made by this person, should be placed before an advisory board comprising of former judges of High Court, or maybe sometimes sitting judges also, and persons having qualification to be appointed as judges of the High Court. Unless they approve of such detention, it lapses in 3 months. And thereafter, since all this was there, this may create trouble, this may pose a problem. So what happened? MISA was amended soon after proclamation of emergency a number of times. First of all came the amendment on the 2nd or 3rd day of proclamation of emergency itself, on 29th of June 1975, saying that the grounds of detention need not be disclosed. So, what to say? You are struck on the first issue itself. The basic is gone. And one would be at a loss even to know whether there is something, or the person who signed that detention order acted without any authority, without any material, without any consideration of anything. Along with it was taken to be that then came an amendment which said, that came on 10th of July 1975, saying that the requirement of confirmation by the advisory board and hearing before advisory board is also gone. Matter need not be placed before the advisory board. And then came a further amendment saying that the grounds or material which has compared on the basis of which the detention has been made need not be disclosed at all. So it could have been as arbitrary, as draconian, as oppressive as one may stretch the word to mean. But this was brought in as a fact of life. So many were detained by giving a simple order saying that Mr. So and so is placed under preventive detention under provisions of MISA. Then another letter issued to him. It is not in public interest to disclose the material on the basis of which this detention is based. In exercise of this power, supplying of groundwater detention is dispensed with. So the protection, if at all one could be read into the Article 22 of the Constitution, they have been, each one of them has been taken, crushed and nullified. This left the poor Indian citizen at this. People went to High Court by way of a writ of habeas corpus. Some of the High Courts allowed it, and ultimately they came. The state came in appeal to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, while this all was going on, then next day of emergency, because there are certain fundamental rights given to citizens of India in our Constitution, and for the purposes of our present discussion, the relevant articles would be Article 14, Article 19, Article 20, Article 21 and Article 22. If I state in a nutshell that Article 14 of our Constitution says that it lays down the principle of equality before law. It says that everybody will be treated equal without any consideration of caste, creed or any other consideration. Resting it there, I proceed further. Article 19 lays down in its clause 1 certain listed fundamental rights which are numbered as A, B, C, D, E, F and G. The fundamental right under subclause A relates to freedom of speech. B relates to freedom of assembly, peaceful assembly without arms, etc. Then clause C gives a right to form association. D gives a right to freedom of movement throughout the country, and E gives a right to reside anywhere in India. Of course, Jammu and Kashmir was a prohibited territory till yesterday. Now it is also available to an Indian citizen. Then there was a right to property, which has been done away with by the Morarji government on 20th of June 1979 by bringing in 44th Amendment to the Constitution. As of today, no Indian citizen has a fundamental right of property. Then clause G talks about the liberty for anybody to carry any profession. But this Article 19 is not much of significance for our present discussion. What is more significance is Article 21 and 22. Article 20 lays down that a person cannot be incarcerated unless he is proved to have violated law, committed an offence which has been defined as an offence under our system, and he has been convicted for that. Along with an liberty protection called prohibition of double jeopardy, that a person cannot be convicted for the same conduct twice over. Thereafter comes the Article 21, which says that no person, no citizen can be deprived of his life or liberty except in accordance with the procedure established by law. There is a long pending debate. The due process clause in American Constitution saying that every act should conform to due process. Whether our this procedure established by law comes to up to that. Without entering into that debate, of course, due process of law is a wider term, and but even this lesser thing which is given to us in the name of procedure established by law, it is observed more in breach. Then, of course, I have spoken something about Article 22, the safeguards in that. Now, immediately on the next day of this proclamation of emergency becoming public, came another public proclamation from, or one may call it, from the worthy President of India, that enforcement of rights under Articles 14, 21 and 22 are suspended during the period of emergency. During the period, this declaration of emergency made on 4th of December 1971 as also 25th of June 1975 remain in force. Then thereafter came another ordinance that that came on 29th of June, that ground of detention need not be disclosed to the public. Then something very crucial came on 3rd of July 1975, and it was that the government in its wisdom, without any reason, without any process, without any inquiry, without anything, put a ban on certain organizations like RSS, Jamaat-e-Islami, Anand Marg and etc. It's a long list. I am not going into merits of any ban put on any organization or otherwise. But for my present purposes, it is that there was a motive behind it. Because under Defence of India rules, DIR as it came to be popularly known, there is a rule 33 which imposes a 7-year sentence for anybody to even talk of an organization which has been banned by the government. And on 3rd of July 1975, when the ban was put on these organizations, an order emanated from the Union Home Ministry, which was flashed to state governments, then to the districts, then to going up to Thana level in this country. Sum and substance of which was that today government has imposed ban on these organizations. You please, gentlemen, be active, get people who belong to opposition parties, put them behind the bars, and put name of one or the other organization as their association. And why this was done, I'll come to that, because there was a complete negation of bail. The mandate of law which was created in the name of DIR was that no bail will be granted to, no person will be able to gain any bail. Then this not resting there, since the matter had reached the Supreme Court and detentions, all this was being discussed. On 24th of January 1976, MISA was amended. Prior to that, on 8th of January 1976, the government said the right to enforce Article 19 has also been suspended. Now, with its background, the stage was ripe for hearing on the question whether during emergency somebody who is detained under MISA will be heard or not heard, will have a right to challenge his detention or do a thing. Surprisingly enough, and I am sorry to say, that Justice P.N. Bhagwati, who delivered that very benevolent judgment on 20th of December 1973, made a complete somersault in the judgment delivered by the Supreme Court, once again by a 5-judge bench on 28th of April 1976. The beauty of situation is that this 20th December 1973 verdict was 4-1. This time on 28th of April 1976 also the verdict was 4-1. Only Justice H.R. Khanna was the judge who dissented with majority. I won't go into how we lost, how we felt cheated, defeated, betrayed and all that, having very high hopes, at least with two of the judges, namely Justice Bhagwati and Justice Chandrachud, who were members of that bar. You will excuse me for saying this thing, that we people at bar openly said, used to say that we did not have much of hope with Justice Ray and Justice Baig. Anyway, but the verdict came. Now, Justice Khanna, if I may just read only one sentence out of his whole thing, and I think because if I start reading what he said, much of our time will be taken into this thing. Then he finally concluded to say that a dissent in the court of last resort, to use the words, is an appeal to the brooding spirit of the law, to the intelligence of future day, when a later decision may possibly correct the error into which the dissenting judge believes the court to have been betrayed. Now, this is what Justice Khanna had and held in favor of the detainee. Justice Bhagwati, of course, making a somersault, and the peculiarly enough, what argument logic prevailed was that the right to life is not, life of an Indian citizen is not something given by God, something given by nature. Is the recognition of his life or liberty under Article 21, which is the real substance of this right. I scratch my head. Had Article 21 not been there in our constitution, would no Indian have survived? Could nobody survive in this country? Could nobody breathe, eat or do all functions of life? After all, if his existence is under Article 21, 21 goes, his existence goes, his right to live goes. That was the perversity, I'll say height of perversity, adopted by the majority judges of the Supreme Court, who are held against the citizen in that dreaded, criticized and resented judgment in the name of ADM Jabalpur versus Shivkant Shukla. Once again, if I may give the citation to that, it is contained in 1976 Criminal Law Journal, at beginning at page 945. Now, this is as far as visa is concerned. Every Indian citizen who was in detention and who was not felt any concern about those who are in detention, gave up all hope of these detainees coming out of jail alive. Because knowing when this emergency is going to be withdrawn, till the time it is there, they have to remain there. Who lives there? हर आह को चाहिए एक उम्र असर होने तक, कौन जीता है तेरी जुल्फ के सर होने तक. Goswami Tulsidas has said, Dheeraj, Dharam, Mitra, Arunari, आपातकाल परहियचारी. In this apatkal of emergency, a friend, namely judiciary, I dare say, let down the Indian citizen, betrayed the Indian citizen. It could not withstand the test of time. Of course, Justice Bhagwati later on expressed regret for that judgment of 28th of April 1976, almost 35 years thereafter in the year 2011. Similar sentiments were expressed by Justice Chandrachud also. Had these two reverend judges kept this thing in mind on 28th of April 1975, probably the fate would have been different. Anyway, when you lose all hope, still a ray of hope comes. While everything was going on, even things went to the extent that the parliament, which was elected in the year 1971, its term came to an end on 18th of March 1976. 5 years were over, but no elections were held, and this parliament itself passed a resolution extending its life. Then it passed yet another resolution on 5th of November 1976 to say that this life of this parliament would last up to November 1977. One is left to wonder till today what prompted Srimati Indira Gandhi at that time, that on 18th of January 1977, she asked the president to dissolve Lok Sabha and call for fresh election. And the fresh elections were called. When these elections were called, the emergency was still in place and polling started. It started in the month of March 1977, and towards the end of month of March, if my memory does not betray me, around about 19th or 20th of March 1977, the results started pouring in, and the Congress party faced a very serious defeat. There were some states, particularly north, where not even a single member contesting on Congress ticket was elected to Lok Sabha. Even Indira Gandhi lost herself. Having faced this defeat and having seeing the things as they were, and just saying two simple things, that we have had elaborate provisions in our constitution, but they did not help us in the hour of our need. It could be manipulated, and it was manipulated, and all that happened. Now, coming to the second instrument of this, namely the Defence of India rules, DIR as it was popularly called. It had various IPC offences were put in a slightly different language, putting a slightly different sentence, and the three of the rules which were put in much use were rules 33, 43 and Rule 69. Now, if I may read the relevant clause for this, he says where the prosecution, of course it said no bail will be granted unless the prosecution is heard, and where the prosecution opposes the application and the contravention is of any such provision, these rules or orders made thereunder, as the central or the state government may by notification or notified order specify on this behalf, court is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for believing that he is not guilty of such contravention. The provision is made that court, before grants bail to a person, has to record its satisfaction that it believes that the person cannot be said to be guilty of contravention being alleged against him. Those of us who have any idea of criminal law under Code of Criminal Procedure and other and all the offences, the provision is that a person, the first occasion for a person to say comes that he is not guilty, comes when the charge is to be framed. He makes his submissions on the charge. But even when court thinks a charge is to be framed, but considering totality of circumstances, court may still enlarge the person on bail. But here, such an onerous condition has been placed under Rule 184 of Defence of India rules. Of course, they are not in place today, but when they were there, how stringent, how draconian, how oppressive this provision was, one can just imagine. And imagine the plight of those who had to suffer it. Of course, some magistrates and session judges in Mufassil courts, they on certain reading other provisions of CRPC did grant bail to the persons. But that is what people had to face at that time. Now coming to section 108 of CRPC. First I must say that when the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 was enacted, the power to initiate proceedings under section 108 CRPC were given to judicial magistrate. But immediately after coming this act coming into play, it was the judicial magistrate was substituted by executive magistrate. Even today, we do come across that certain police officers sitting as a special magistrates or executive magistrates, they conduct proceedings under section 107 of CRPC. Now, section 108 CRPC contains certain provisions. It says that a magistrate has to first take evidence under section 116 of the Code of Criminal Procedure to see if there is any substance in the allegations being made. Of course, there is a long list of activities concerning which this power can be exercised. But what was resorted to during emergency was something akin to an offence under section 124A of IPC, namely sedition. Bringing in disrepute or disharmony government established by law. And a simple statement used to be made in those days that Indira Gandhi has become a dictator. She doesn't want to obey the court verdict, and we should fight against her regime. It's my guess how fighting against the regime of a person, how criticizing a person, a conduct of a politician becomes sedition. But it was there because the sole idea was that you have to put people behind the bars. Because what was apprehended was that if people are outside, they talk, they are free to hold meetings, take out rallies, give vent to their feelings. Which became clear that some of very committed members of her own party, like Mr. Chandrasekhar, Mohan Dharia, etc., they themselves came out to criticize it, and Mr. Chandrasekhar was even put. So this was what was done in this. Now, leaving it at that, because two things. Number one, MISA as such is no more there. It has been buried by the Janata government of Morarji Bhai in the year 1978. This Defence of India rules, they have come to an end with the withdrawal of the proclamation of emergency on 21st of March 1977. What remains, section 108 of CRPC, it is still there. It can be misused and it is being misused. I leave it there. Another aspect, if I may touch in the, because when we talk of Article 352 of the Constitution, authorizing the government to proclaim emergency, it also under which specified fundamental rights can be suspended during period of emergency, as I pointed out just now. in 1976 did not have any thing. The simple thing was that the Prime Minister goes to the President, urges to issue a proclamation is issued. Another proclamation, the Prime Minister asks for suspension of fundamental rights, that is also true. Now, and a proclamation of emergency has an unlimited span of life. It can only be withdrawn by another proclamation as and when the Prime Minister of the day may take to withdraw it. What was done was, by the changes brought in by Morarji government, was that in Article 352, a clause 3 was added. I won't take time in reading that. But the substance of that provision is that President will not issue a proclamation unless decision of Union Cabinet for the same has been communicated to him in writing. What happened on the night of 25th of June 1975 was there was nothing, no decision of Cabinet. Cabinet had not even met. It met on the next day. Only the Prime Minister going and saying that I apprehend this disturbance and internal security is in danger. Please issue a proclamation, and it was. Now it has been substituted. Then there was earlier a provision that a proclamation of emergency issued under Article 352 has got to be approved by both houses of Parliament within 2 months' time. Ministers also decide to play tyrants. What will happen? Who will stop them? And coming to the vote in Parliament, now we have 10th schedule in place. Ruling party issues a whip. You have to vote for this proclamation. It's gone. Then he said that any proclamation which has been approved by Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha will lapse within 6 months of approval. It has been given a lifespan of 6 months. Resting here, one would say, okay, 6 months, बुरे वक्त के एक कोई सीमा तो है. But it is not so, because the same very provision contains a provision that it can be extended by another span of 6 months, and there is no limit on number how many times this extension can be granted. So it brings us back to the same situation. From mercy of the Prime Minister, we come to the mercy of the Cabinet and the ruling party through its members. As far as Article 359 is concerned, the amendment brought in by the Morarji government says that only fundamental rights other than fundamental right under Article 20 and 21 can be suspended. 20 and 21 has been given some sort of a more immortality. It will be there. Contained under Article 22, one by one, that becomes the law. And as Justice Bhagwati put it in his judgment of 28th of April 1976, that your right to life is not God's gift, is not a natural life, it's a right, it's a right under Article 21. So, we come to the same thing. I pose a basic question here. My friends, ponder over this thing. You make an allegation that security of India is under threat due to internal disturbances. It's a fact. It requires evidence. It requires material. It requires a probe. One person is standing or 10 persons standing and saying that yes, I apprehend there is danger. Does not make a danger. We are living in a system where everything must be reasonable, must be proved. Even with all the amendments. I think I have taken much of the time, and whatever has come now, much can be said, but I tried to be as brief as I could. Of course, reference to certain details cannot be avoided. I will always be willing to have personal or a group discussion whenever some issues are posed, some crop up. And for the present, if any one of our esteemed friends would have any query, I will try to respond to that in my own humble way with whatever little knowledge I have.
Thank you, sir, for such informative and detailed session. So I request all the friends who are here, so if you have any of the questions, please put forward your questions. We are here for next 5 to 7 minutes to answer those questions. Are we audible now? I think there is some network issue. I can hear and see, I can see your comments. I think we are audible now. Correct. So we are waiting for the questions. If any one of the participants they have any questions, they can put forward their questions in the